everybody can get a seat and quiet down. This is probably going to be a long evening, and we want to give everybody an opportunity to be heard. So we'd like to get started. It's about 5 after 6. We are recording this meeting so that if county commissioners, town council people, anybody that would like to review this can hear everybody's comments. Mayor Baroni asked me, he will be here later, he asked me to give his apologies. His son just got married, so he is in the process of shuttling relatives back and forth to airports, but he will be here. And then hopefully with Channel 22 we'll also be able to put this on the web so people that weren't able to attend can listen, get information. A couple of ground rules before we start. My name's Rick Bellis, I'm the town manager. This is not going to be a debate. This is going to be a short presentation by John Thompson of our airport manager, who will just try to give some basic facts, some things that we think people have asked about, like, you know, what's the length of the runway, what's the heaviest aircraft, what's the time frame for all of the phases here that we're looking at, so everyone understands where we are and how to participate in the process. And then I will turn it over to Paul, and I guess we're co-moderating. And what we'd like to do is, after the PowerPoint, just have some questions and answers of John about what's up there, or maybe some of the basic questions, I guess, to set the framework for people about the project. And then we'll kind of be very polite to each other and hear from anyone who is either for or anyone that is against. We would like this to be an informational session and an exchange of views. So therefore we would ask, let everyone have their say. Everyone's opinion is important here, that we all be included. But again, I don't want us to be engaging each other in this. This is a forum, a community meeting, that we all want the opportunity to be heard here. And to hear everybody's, there may be the issues and questions that have never come up before. The one thing I will say is that the bids are out at this point, and the timing was chosen because in talking to the various groups, it seemed to be that some of the questions we couldn't answer until the scope of services was developed by the consultants, so that we knew what it was we were bidding out and looking for. Prior to that, we may have known, but we couldn't speak publicly about what it was because it could have given an unfair advantage to one party or another ahead of the bidding. We don't know, we'll be very honest, we don't know if we'll get anybody to respond at all to the bids. We don't know if they'll come in above the funding that's allocated for the project, which means they can either get thrown out or rebid. So there's been no decision as a governing body made by the town council at this point, other than to spend the initial $55,000. It was whatever we spent on the scoping. With that, one of the things I'm going to do is, I noticed there's a lot of people knocking on the door of the town hall, so I'm not being impolite if I leave here for a couple of minutes. I want to go put a sign over on that door to tell people that the meeting is over here. But I will turn it over to John Thompson, our airport manager. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you taking your time to be here.
Good evening, everybody. We've got a PowerPoint presentation here for you guys, and I hope it'll be informative. I hope it'll be some information you can use. Can we get the lights over here? So I thought I'd just give you guys a brief presentation on the history of the airport and the runway construction project. The Taos Airport was originally located in Taos at the south end of town near Friday Motors. Our runway was on the west side of Highway 68.
They can't hear you.
Okay. And there was a parking area on the east side of Highway 68. Aircraft were required to stop for traffic on the highway before they crossed over to the runway and parking areas. In the mid-60s, property was acquired at the airport's current location and construction was completed in 1967. In the mid-1980s, the town and the FAA proposed and planned an airport expansion project which included constructing a new 10,000-foot runway at almost a right angle to the existing runway. By 1990, land was acquired and an environmental assessment was started. After FAA and Town of Taos evaluations in the 90s, the proposed project was scaled back to an 8,600-foot runway to meet projected needs. This runway would allow safe operations when a crosswind condition exists and provide a longer, wider surface to account for decreased aircraft performance at high altitude and during warm weather. Expansion plans were eventually tabled pending the completion of an environmental impact statement. Over several years, a memorandum of agreement was developed and eventually signed by Taos Pueblo, the Town of Taos, the FAA, the National Park Service, the State Historic Preservation Office, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the New Mexico Department of Transportation Aviation Division. This took place in December 2011. The MOA provides stipulations to which all involved parties have agreed, including a requested minimum altitude for aircraft flying over Taos Pueblo, a passive aircraft monitoring system, accident reporting procedures, and a pilot education and awareness program. The pictures provided here are of some of the aircraft monitoring equipment, which are installed at the airport and on top of Green Mountain east of Eagle Nest. And one of the taxiway signs is shown here that reminds pilots just before takeoff to avoid flying over Taos Pueblo. These taxiway signs are on the ends of the taxiways and will also be on the ends of the new taxiway. Regarding the environmental impact statement, its purpose, this is a quote from the first page of the executive summary. The Federal Aviation Administration prepared this environmental impact statement to identify the potential environmental effects associated with the construction and operation of proposed improvements to the Taos Regional Airport. Also, regarding the town's role in this EIS, this is an FAA document, and any questions or comments that you have about the EIS should be directed to the FAA. The EIS process began in 1991. The scoping meeting was conducted, as it states in the EIS, to provide an early and open process for determining the scope of issues to be addressed within the EIS and to identify the significant issues related to the proposed project. According to the EIS document, 3 public workshops and hearings were held. 27 meetings were held with Taos Pueblo tribal government, either as face-to-face meetings or as conference calls. There were 2 different public comment periods. 392 public comments were submitted, all of which were responded to in the EIS. The EIS was completed in April of 2012, with the FAA issuing a record of decision 5 months later with a finding of no significant impact. Again, any questions regarding the EIS need to be directed to the FAA. And if you need their contact information, I will provide that to you. The image here represents the commonly used traffic patterns for Taos Regional Airport, including the new runway. This map was presented at a previous town-county joint meeting, so it's probably not something new to most of you. The blue area is the airport influence zone. And just so you know, an airport influence zone is defined as an area adjacent to a public use airport that can affect or can be affected by airports and aircraft operations. The pink areas are the runway approach zones. The green areas are the traffic pattern zones, and the small yellow areas are the runway protection zones, or object-free zones, which are kept clear for safety. The projected timeline for this first phase of construction began with the advertisements for invitations to bid. The bid opening date is scheduled for Thursday this week. A recommendation to award the bid will be presented to Council on September 9th, and pending Council approval, construction could begin in early October. The construction timeline stated in the bid specs is 150 days, and there are penalties for not completing the required tasks within that time period. The tasks for this first phase of construction include reconstructing the approach end of the existing runway 4, constructing a haul road from US 64 to the staging area, and this will be to prevent damage to the airport entrance road and for separation between construction equipment and airport patrons. The majority of the work will be completed, to complete the grading and drainage, leveling the area where runway 1230 and taxiway Bravo will be. And next, what I've got here are some typical aircraft that currently use Taos Regional, including these Gulfstream G450 business jets, the Global Express, which is currently utilizing the airport and is the maximum size and gross weight the new runway is capable of supporting, and the Falcon 900. This is a 3-engine business jet, and as I stated, these aircraft already use the Taos Regional Airport regularly, but they're limited in weight due to the length of the existing runway. Other aircraft we see regularly are the heavy lift helicopters used for firefighting. This type of helicopter was used during the Encebado fire right here on Taos Pueblo tribal lands. This National Guard search and rescue helicopter was in Taos just last week for a mission over Taos Pueblo tribal lands, with one of the crew members being a Taos tribal police officer. And in our community, the red Care Flight helicopters are a pretty common sight, responding to Holy Cross Hospital as well as to accident scenes in remote areas. The Taos wing of the Civil Air Patrol flies search and rescue missions throughout northern New Mexico using Cessna 172s and 182s. And it should also be noted that the majority of the military flights in and out of Taos Regional Airport are conducted by Civil Air Patrol and National Guard, which are both considered military aircraft. As you can see on the tail of this Civil Air Patrol plane, they are United States Air Force auxiliary. Next we have in addition to helicopter medevac, we also see a lot of fixed wing medevac operations, including this twin engine jet prop Cessna Conquest. And this Learjet medevac, which can conduct a patient transport from Taos to Denver in about 33 minutes. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions a little bit later. And once again, I just want to stress that the environmental impact statement, it is a federal document, and I won't be interpreting what it says. Any questions about the EIS need to be directed to the FAA.
John, I need to ask you, because it's not clear, the current runway has a capacity of 20,000 pounds, correct?
Excuse me, John. Paul, for
Yeah.
the sake of all of us, could
Yeah.
you use a microphone?
Okay.
We all
Sure.
start doing that
Yeah.
as we ask our question. Here.
Oh,
So if you
will
could,
this one
if
work
that's all
then?
right, Mr. Bellis and John and Paul,
Yeah.
state your name and then, thank you.
Okay, I'm Paul Christie, and I understand that the existing runway has a capacity of 20,000 pounds. Is that correct?
Put the mic closer.
20,000 pounds.
That's its rated capacity, that's what's listed. 20 or 25,000 pounds, I believe is what it is.
Okay, and the new runway is going to be 60,000 pounds, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so obviously the new runway is going to accommodate larger planes than the current runway.
Yes and no. That's a tough question to answer the way it's stated because aircraft will weigh different weights based on how much fuel they take on. That Global Express that we showed up there, that aircraft is designed with about a 60,000 pound payload or 60,000 pound gross weight, and that is what the new runway is designed as its maximum weight. And although it does use the airport now, it can come in lighter than its gross weight. It has to right now. Okay.
There's a question over there.
Yes, I can talk loud enough, I'm sure. I was curious why the county was not included in that initial list of government agencies that were involved with the original EA. It was like the third or fourth slide. I didn't see the county involved. Why not?
That was not anything to do with the environmental assessment or the EIS. That was for the memorandum of agreement. That was the list of people that were involved in that process.
Yeah, my name is Diane, and I would be curious why at the initial stages the county wasn't involved.
I can't speak to that. I don't know. I've been the airport manager for 3 years, and this process has been going on for a great number of years, 28 years that I know of.
Thank you. My name is Andres Vargas. I'd like to make a statement. Initially, the airport expansion was for a crosswind runway to improve safety for small planes. I know that because I was the attorney for the Town of Taos when this was initiated. And from that point on, from the very beginning, from the onset, the town council did not want participation of the citizens of Taos. The counselor, one of the counselors, they were debating whether they should allow the public to speak, and they asked the attorney, and I said, let the people speak. Anyway, today the expansion is to extend the existing runway 8,600 feet, widening it to 100 feet and paving it to accommodate dual tire planes weighing over 50 tons. The purpose is precisely for attracting more substantial air traffic and large commercial and military planes, and to enhance the economic viability of Taos County, not just the town. Terry Bruner, the regional administrator in the FAA record decision, has confirmed that Cannon Air Force Base needs low altitude training areas such as proposed for the Taos Municipal Airport, and that is a major concern to many of us. Already, the Osprey has been sighted in and around Arroyo Hondo. Such a major expansion, not improvement, in terms of noise, pollution, congestion, and use, etc., would profoundly affect the lives of Taoseños. It is therefore of the utmost important to point out that there is no comprehensive zoning for the area adjacent to the airport, which is an absolute legal requirement of the FAA. I hand you what is a copy of a letter signed by manager. I'd like to make this a part of the record. Signed by the town manager, Gus Cordova, to the FAA. The letter by the town to the FAA that the town is required by federal law to, quote, coordinate with local jurisdictions. And this answers the question that was just immediately asked. That is, the County of Taos, to ensure that appropriate action, including adoption of zoning laws, will be enacted. To date, the town has not involved the county in addressing the concerns of the county, and the county itself has not stepped up to the plate in behalf of the concerns of all Taoseños. Again, these are legal requirements that they've been treated by the town as mere formalities, to be ignored and denigrates those of us with real concerns as outlined to you before and prior to today. So unless our commissioners, the county commissioners, address these concerns and enact comprehensive land use planning, zoning for the airport and here what Taoseños want, the town will run roughshod over our concerns. The town owns the airport, but the county owns the adjacent lands, as well as the plaza to which the county again has abdicated its ownership rights. The town owns nothing in the plaza. The streets are owned by the Pueblo, and the town, and the county rather, by patent in May 21st of 1935, was given by the Delano Roosevelt administration ownership of the courthouse and the plaza, the park. But as you have seen for the last 30, 40 years, the town has assumed jurisdiction and the county has abdicated its ownership responsibilities to the owners of towns, thereby doing what the county, what the merchants want, but not listening to the people of Taos County in general. This is a commons, this was the center of our town. But in any event, I want to end by stating that we are not a radical group, as Councilor Andrew Gonzalez has said in an email that was mailed out to everybody. We are genuinely concerned, patriotic citizens. We have genuine concerns about what is happening. And if it's going to involve bringing large commercial airplanes and military planes, we need to know that. And we need to know how they will impact on everybody, not just the town. And I resent the insults that Councilor Gonzalez has sought to impugn our integrity by calling us radicals. He is so biased that he should recuse himself. He has prejudged the issues involving the airport. And I ask that he not involve himself in the decision of whether this airport to go. Thank you.
Just a quick response to part of that. You stated that we're extending the existing runway to 8,600 feet and widening the existing runway to 100 feet. That is incorrect. The new runway is a separate runway from the existing runway. And you said that its capacity would be 50 tons. I believe 50 tons is roughly 100,000 pounds. As I stated in the presentation, the weight limit, the design limit of the new runway is 60,000 pounds. And one of the aircraft that was shown is what the maximum weight of the runway is capable of supporting. So that is as big an aircraft as the runway is designed for.
If you were under oath, I would believe that, but I read in the EIS for both that it was in fact dual tire airplane that would accommodate dual tire airplanes weighing 50 tons.
I want to make a short presentation on exactly what Mr. Vargas was referring to, due process and the people who are going to be affected. So if you want to hear that now or you want to answer questions. All right.
So while they're getting that set up, could I just make a humble request that we refrain from clapping? All clapping does is tell those of us that want to hear it that we're good boys and waste time. Thank you. Don't think that.
Okay, so what Mr. Vargas was referring to is, and what John was speaking to is, you can see the lower Las Colonias neighborhood there, and you see how the green area, which is really a high impact area, how it's reaching out over Las Colonias Road almost to Blueberry Hill. Those homes in there, Sugar Lane, Verdolaga, other homes, probably a couple hundred families, maybe more, living there. They are going to be, I mean, the statement says, you can't read it on the logo there, but it says, the green zone is conditionally acceptable for housing, conditionally acceptable, if appropriate disclosure is made about navigation, easements, and density limitations are put in place. The problem is there are already homes there. Okay, so, you know, families are living there, and due process requires, and it's not, you know, I'm not into all the legalities of, you know, due process zoning rules and regs, but the reality is, you know, there are families living there who are going to be highly impacted by this new runway. And common sense says that they deserve due process. They have to be informed. We've taken this map to people living up there. Nobody, not one of them, has been aware of the impact to their homes. So, you know, when they say the FAA, you know, that we've had all these public comment periods, that's strictly the FAA. It's the local government, Taos County, that has an obligation to protect the values and the welfare of the people, you know, that are affected here, and they haven't done that. The town is supposed to get a special use permit for this large project, and in the process notify all the people living there that there's going to be a public hearing. That hasn't been done. So, I mean, that's just basic due process. And I don't know how, I'll just take some questions if you want, okay? Yeah, you had your hand raised? Yeah. No, right behind you. Yeah, okay.
Microphone.
I thought we had another one.
Right here.
You've got the floater, and there's another one back here.
Oh.
Hello, my name is Pat Ruiz, and I live on Toon Drive, right next to the airport. Before I start, I'd just like to make one statement. I contract with the military, and so I have the utmost respect for the military and their families. As a contractor, I've been on Air Force bases in the United States and in Europe. And I would just like to let you know that I've been on bases where the C-130s and the Hercules have been flying in and out. And I want to tell you that when they start maneuvers, you better hang on to the windows in your house because they shake. I also have one other comment, and that is that it seems like a conflict somehow that we have been named a national monument, and then at the same time we're expanding our airport. right next to it. So, thank you.
Just pass it along. This.
I want to thank you for clarifying the map, because I was looking at one and it wasn't, you couldn't tell exactly where 64 was or anything else.
Can't hear you.
Okay, my voice is low, I'll raise it. I live in Hondo, and we are already having trouble with helicopters. I mean, they come up the valley and sometimes they cross the valley. They come so low over our house and over the church. I live on the Placida. And I have an oxygen machine and I have a CPAP machine that both make noise at night. And the vibrations from those helicopters, you know, wake me up. There are a lot of old adobes in Hondo, which, you know, that vibration is not good for. And the airport hasn't even expanded. So we also in Hondo have cattle and sheep and goats. Those animals won't do well. That's a farming community. And it's an old historical, I mean, it's a cultural value to farm there. And many of us are really wanting local farm produce and everything. We're not going to have it with those new planes flying over. So I don't see how the EPA or the government or anybody else can say it is not going to impact our valley. It is, absolutely. And so, I can't tell you, I mean, there was one helicopter that across the road from me was just above the willow tree. And I couldn't figure out why, when I was gardening in the yard, everything was flying around because it wasn't making a lot of noise. And I've never seen a helicopter that didn't, but it vibrated. And when I looked up, there was a helicopter just hovering over that tree. But most of them go up like to a Lobo Ranch and they cut across. Who in the world is going up there now? Who's cutting across our valley? And if there's that much traffic now, what's going to happen when this new extension goes?
This gentleman.
I'm Frank Oatman, and I live in Hondo as well. And I'm an ex-Army officer. I'm not against the military in any way either. I have a question for Mr. Thompson, and that is, some of us don't quite understand this. The existing airport, as I understand, was built to accommodate planes landing under the prevailing wind conditions, to be the right direction, the right length and so forth, to accommodate planes landing under the prevailing winds of Taos. Now, as I understand it, this new runway, I understand it's a completely different runway, will cut off how many feet of the existing runway?
420.
420 feet of the existing runway. I don't understand that. If it's a safety issue, that means that the planes that are landing with the prevailing winds, which generally obtain here at the airport, would have a 420-foot charter runway to accommodate any emergencies. Can you explain why that is the concern? Why we shouldn't be concerned about cutting the runway that was built for the prevailing wind conditions here?
I can explain.
Thank you.
I can explain why the existing runway is being shortened. The FAA does not allow us to have intersecting runways.
Right.
And so a greater safety factor with two runways is an intersecting runway. I know that is the reason the existing runway is being shortened. They cannot be intersecting runways. And the runway, runway heading, the crosswind component is not the biggest factor here in safety. Runway length, density, altitude, that plays a major role. Just before this meeting, about a half an hour before the meeting, I called up our automated weather station out at the airport, and density altitude was 9,800 feet. We are at an elevation of 7,091 feet. An aircraft will perform as if it were at 9,800 feet under the conditions right at an hour ago. So runway length is a huge factor, along with the crosswind component.
Here's a handout. If anybody wants to see what the runway wind coverage is of the current runway, it's here.
Thank you. You've answered part of the question, but you haven't answered the essence of my question. And the essence of my question is, why do we want to shorten the runway that is built to accommodate prevailing wind conditions? Is there somebody else, a pilot, who could please answer this question?
Ian,
the essence of the question? Tino should know.
We don't want to shorten the runway. What got missold or misunderstood at one point is this is a crosswind runway, the new one. It serves two purposes. When the winds really get ugly around here, it's between about March and May. And the winds are blowing 30 to 50 knots at the airport. During that period, they come out of 290 to 310, which is almost directly down the new runway, but that's eyewash. Probably the bigger factor is the length of the runway. For instance, John put a picture of that green and white Learjet up there. That's a Lear 35. That's our only quick hop for people going primarily to Dallas. We take some of them to Denver, but the long-range patients go to Dallas. There's several things they can't do in Albuquerque, and we lost 2 of them about 3 weeks ago because of the density altitude. That airplane on a hot day can't take off out of Taos with any fuel. We had another one the other day. They thought they were doing a quick run to Dallas. The first stop was Santa Fe for fuel with a passenger on board. What they ended up doing is we couldn't get them off the ground here. By the time we downloaded fuel or would have been able to burn off fuel, the passenger would have been dead. So what they did is they stuck them in an ambulance and ran them to Santa Fe and loaded them up. So the issue is twofold. The winds are part of the problem, but the length of the runway is the major problem. And we would love to have 5,800 feet of runway, what we have right now, but they won't give it to us. You cannot get grandfathered into an intersecting runway. You have to have had it already. Now, why didn't we extend the runway? There is about 600 feet at one end and about 600 feet at the other. Because for an instrument runway, you have to have a clearance zone. That is federally mandated. FAA tells you how much space you need at either end and how wide it has to be. With the reservation fence at the southwest end and US 64 at the northeast end, you can't do it. So given the limits of the land, there's only one way you can put it. Now, the longer runway, there's talk, every time it's in the paper, somebody says we're going to get airline service, we're going to get big aircraft in here. Our last airline had 8 passenger seats and a co-pilot and a pilot. They went under in 7 months because they couldn't fill the seats. The previous airline lasted 5 years. It had 1 pilot and 9 passengers. I flew for it, and we flew about 40% full. So this concept of we're going to be forced to deal with American Airlines and 757s, they're not going to come in here. We don't have the business to keep a puddle jumper busy. The thing about the weights, the gentleman that was questioning the weights, the weight on the existing runway is 25,000 pounds. It's in that mid-20s range. That's called a single truck weight. That means 1 average wheel, which is a small wheel per axle. The actual landing weight on the runway is based on a thing called footprint. What you do is you drill a sample out of a core sample, you pull it out of that pavement, you go test it. The core sample is important because every airplane has a different footprint. For instance, you're all afraid of C-130s. The C-130 is well inside the limit of this airfield already. They don't want to come here. There's no reason to. The C-130, I've worked C-130s all over the world. I'm not a C-130 pilot, but I've worked their airfield requirements. We put them down on mud in Alaska on a 3,000-foot mountaintop runway. The issue on runway bearing is dependent on the airplane. For instance, Cessna 182, the little red and white blue in there, has as heavy a footprint as an F-16. F-16 weighs 42,000 pounds, that one weighs 2,300 pounds. So jumping up and down about the footprint, this is a public field. Anybody that wants to use it can come in and determine the needs of their aircraft and be able to use the field. And it's not a function of gross weight. That is a simplified version to help a simplified pilot, the guy that doesn't want to go through all the calculations to determine, can I put myself down there? The thing about the lady with your oxygen, the day the article came out about that helicopter overflying your facility, your house, the lead pilot of Tri-State Care Flight came over and he was in a panic. He says, Kino, that was me. We were going to a scene. A scene call is not when you transfer somebody from the Cuesta Clinic to Albuquerque, or actually the primary hospital now, level 1 care unit is Santa Fe. It is when they go to the highway, they go to your house, they go to a mountaintop. We don't have anybody, I've been there 12 years working the airport, we don't have anybody, not once, has flown from the airport to their house. Tom Worrell a few years ago tried to set up an ecotourism thing on his ranch north of Cuesta. It had one attempt. The density altitude was so high, the aircraft got on the ground and had to haul fuel to it.
Can you ask a question? Because that's not the only time that happens.
I'd like to know why that's not the only time it has happened. My neighbors in North Hunter contended they cut across all the time and go up to Lobo Ranch. So it happens over and over. That was the time that I complained about. But it happens all the time. Why are they going up there?
I can only speak for what I see at the Taos Airport. I run the business out there. The Taos Airport's helicopter traffic. We get an occasional National Guard helicopter that comes through on the way from Fort Carson, Colorado Springs to Fort Hood, Texas and stops for fuel. We get 42 to 45 flights a month in the local area out of our local emergency helicopter, and the rest of the helicopters that come in here are either firefighting or they're National Guard doing something local, or what you see a lot of is if you live near a power line, Tri-State hires 2 types of helicopters. One has a probe on the front and it flies about 10, 15 feet over the top of the power line, and it's looking for emissions. It senses electronic emissions. They're looking for leaks. The other one is strictly a visual check. When they do that, they do walking speed. They might be doing 5 miles an hour and they stop at every pole and every juncture and everything. Whenever there's a complaint, it rings at my desk, if not John's desk. And most of the time we get a call that sounds like the military is hovering over my house. Well, most of the electric company helicopters, for whatever reason, are painted black. They're MD-500 black ones. And those they don't belong, they're contracted to Tri-State. You can always call my office and we'll tell you what we know. But remember, Taos is like the majority of airports in this country. It is a non-controlled field. That means that we take care of the aircraft in and out, but the aircraft are determine their own flight paths. Now on that map you got up there, and everybody's saying, oh no, the new runway is going to affect Lower Los Colonias and all those people to the northeast. That's an artist's depiction. Pilot determines his direction. That whole thing can be flipped to the south. I grew up on that area down there. The only thing out there are 3 windmills, and they're all broken. So
I'm not sure what you mean an artist's depiction. That's by Armstrong Engineering, the engineering company.
Sir, do you understand? I think it's about 85% of the airports in the country are uncontrolled.
Yeah.
He is giving you a depiction of what could happen. The direction that you enter a runway is up to the pilot at an uncontrolled field. There are only 4 controlled fields in the state of New Mexico. Most of the ones in Colorado uncontrolled also. We could fly that pattern to the south over track day of the Pueblo land just as easily as it can be flown to the north. The determination is the pilot's, unless the city sets up what's called a directional pattern, and that was in the newspaper last week. I talked to that gentleman for several hours. It can all switch to the south.
May I ask you one more question? You know, when the U.S. government puts money into something, that means they can use it too. And so if they're putting $1 million into that airport, how much military access are we going to have? I mean, the helicopters could go crazy.
The military is any one of a bazillion public entities that can use the field. It's public funds. That makes it a public airport. The funding is 90-10. 90% of the funding is coming from the FAA. As it stands right now, the military can use it. The reason they don't is there's not much we have here that they can do. The Air Force Academy brings training aircraft in here a couple of times a month. The Air National Guard brings a couple of aircraft in here on their way to somewhere a couple of times a month. And right now, that's about it. We get a V-22 that does a low approach when he's coming off the low level. There is a MTR, that's called Military Training Route. It's been there since the 70s on the west side of the valley up above the Brazos Box. It runs north to south. There's a military training route that was there when I was a kid. It runs just on the east side of the Pecos Wilderness, up the east side of the Sangre de Cristos. I can remember that in 71, 72. I've flown it. Those have been there. What training guys will regularly do is they will leave a route. There are depicted routes determined by the FAA, and they'll pop up off the route and they'll do a low approach somewhere. The reason they do a low approach at Taos is because we're at 7,100 feet. That's hard to do.
Okay. I'd like this gentleman here to speak if he's willing. He's a veteran.
Hi everybody, my name is Michael Reed and I'm here representing Veterans for Peace this evening. We meet on Saturdays at 1 to 3 at the Meta Theater. I moved to Taos County in 2000. I lived in San Cristobal for 2 years. Took a year to decompress from the lifestyle I had up to that time, so I did a lot of tramping around and hiking around in the woods. And I've seen numerous black helicopters up there. I've seen bombers being flying solo and being refueled. You could count the rivets on the belly of those aircraft. And in 2002, I took a little job. Was working for a local company. We were wiring the Taos Pueblo Day School for computers and phones and whatnot. And one day, walking across the campus with John, was the Pueblo's maintenance guy, we heard a strange noise and looked up, and there was one of those little stealth fighter bombers flying literally right on the treetops. And the pilot turned and looked at us. I did not know that an aircraft could fly that slow and that low, but it was right there. And I was asked to come down and share some thoughts with you folks tonight. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I have PTSD and depression and a whole lot of other happy stuff. But I know that when I have to go down to the VA hospital in Albuquerque and stay in the Heroes Hall overnight, the sound of the aircraft keep me up all night. I find it very stressful. And when I heard about using our towns and our villages for bombing practice, in my mind, I go back to the 5th grade and ask my social studies teacher, Miss Jones, is this right? Is this American? Is this what we should be doing? In my heart, no. I mean, I look around the room tonight and I see a lot of survivors of the Cold War. You remember that time in our history when it was fear every day. And it hasn't changed. Here's the 21st century and it hasn't changed. So what I would like you folks to do is contact your senators, your representatives, and let them know how you feel. It's so easy to do it these days. It is a campaign year, so I'm sure Senator Udall is very interested in listening to what his voters have to say. And I believe in the Constitution that we are the government, not the people that we elect, and not the people that they hire to work for them. The president is not the government, he's a servant. Our senators are not the government, they're the servant. And I did not go to war. I did not take an oath to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the United States and then go to war. To find that the NSA is now spying on me. Yeah, people in Washington, D.C. feel that it's their right to start a war with a country that didn't attack us. I did not put my life on the line for that kind of thing. So seeing you all here tonight makes me very proud to be an American. And I want to thank you very much, and please continue to bitch out your senators and your representatives. Thank you.
I'm going to just try to go through I have a really bad back.
You got a bad back.
Stand up. My feet are numb.
Your name?
My name is Seth Brown, and I'll just try to go through a bunch of factors that haven't been discussed yet tonight. First of all, from everything I've seen about the runway, the main reason the runway is being built and financed is because of density altitude. And the reason for that is it is built and designed. It can be used as a crosswind, but that's not the reason it's being proposed. The reason is that when a jet takes off, when a large heavy plane takes off here in Taos, they have to even like a Learjet, they have to refuel again at lower altitude because they can't fuel up and get a full load of passengers here. So what this airport is designed to do is two main things. One is the military, but the one that causes problems for Taos is private jets and potentially airlines. Steamboat Springs has 3 airlines right now, and they can be subsidized by the new owner of the Ski Valley. They can also be subsidized by the government. And there's 3 airlines, Delta, American, and one other up in Steamboat. And there are ski towns around the west where a lot of air traffic is happening because they have a big enough airport. And the land prices go up a lot when that happens. Okay, so that is the main reason for this. Is what it does is it opens the door for private business jets, airlines, and the Ski Valley can subsidize a charter, and it just opens that because they can fly right out of here with this large airport and get all the way across the country. Otherwise, they have to land in Kansas, Albuquerque, and refuel. It costs time, it's less safe, and it's a big factor. And that's the main reason that this runway is being proposed. Now I just want to quickly go into, I grew up in Saco, I lived there since the mid-50s. In the mid-50s, you could buy an acre of land for $200, irrigated. My parents bought it for that price in 1955. And someone working for a wage, the wages were around $8 a day then, skilled labor. They could, in 2 months, they could save enough money to buy an acre of irrigated land. Now, working people cannot buy land there, and it is pushing the local people out of that area. I grew up there. It was all Spanish families when we moved there. They owned everything out there, and they're being pushed out. When inheritance comes, families are torn apart. I know a family up in El Salto torn apart because of the amount of money that the land is worth. The parents die and the children inherit the land, and some of them want to sell. One of them might want to farm the land. They can't because the other brothers and sisters want to sell. So what is happening, Santa Fe had already happened. The Spanish population was moved out of that area, and the Spanish people in this area created the irrigation system all over this valley.
To the airport.
Okay, this is the problem with expanding the airport. It's the billionaires can come in here and just raise the price of land prices up and push everyone out. That's the reason I'm fighting this, is because the Ski Valley is now owned by someone who has a great deal of money and can do a lot. He can subsidize an airline if he needs to, and he can certainly subsidize a charter service, and he's planning to do that. So I just wanted to say one other thing. Throughout the process, the EIS process, the people were against it. The Ski Valley always showed up, but everyone else was against it, and the Pueblo was against it. The deal out at the Pueblo in 2012, we've talked to a lot of people out there. Most of the people of Pueblo do not know that that went down. It even happened. They don't know that the Pueblo government approved the airport. They do not know that. So our highest percentage of opposition to the airport is the people of the Pueblo. 100% so far of the people we've talked to. And the rest of the area, we have been petitioning. Most of the people are still opposed to the airport. And so what I'm saying is there needs to be a process where the people are included in this. And they have been kept out all the way through until right now because of what Fritz did to call this and let this happen.
My name is Bill, and this is my 48th year in Taos. And 48th year here in Taos. I thought that what Seth Brown said was really good, and it raises the question, how can we get a referendum on building the airport?
I have no idea.
you, I live on Sugar Lane. I have had one plane almost crash into my house. The hot air balloon landed in my backyard. And of course noise. But the planes go that way. If you reverse it, I catch water off my roof. So, will I have a no-fly zone? How about my front-facing glass for solar? And I've had planes rattle it already. How low are they going to fly? And what compensation for us? Our land property value is definitely going to go down. It's going to be louder, noisier, unless they fly high, which they usually don't. And several have crashed. So I have a question. How about us? You know, nobody has asked us or said anything. Can I get some kind of assurance that they won't fly right over my house and dump chemicals into my water? And I don't hear anything about the people around it. But I'm right in Sugar Lane, and I've already had one crash really close, and in those days it wasn't so developed. If it crashed today, it would have hit a house. So I am concerned. And is there any answer for that? How about the people around it? Well, I get an answer.
Mr. Hahn might have an answer. Or?
I don't, but I want to respect what this gentleman asked, and I'd like to hear an answer. You asked about a referendum. I'm sorry, but I would like to ask Mr. Bellis what his thoughts are about a referendum, I think. Please don't clap. It wastes our time.
Very good.
So, Mr. Bellis, what are your thoughts about a referendum, just for kicks?
How many of you are property owners, taxpayers within?
Why don't you take the microphone, please, some others can't.
How many of you are property tax owners within the city limits of the town?
Oh, within the city limits? That's not fair.
That's not
100 feet out.
You're asking a legal question. You can't hold initiative of referendum on a jurisdiction that you aren't a resident of. You're not eligible to vote. That's not meaning that. I was just saying that's the logistical battle that you have.
But the county has friends in it.
We don't have initiative and referendum within the state of New Mexico. And the thresholds are very high to do that.
We had a referendum on the Super Walmart, and it did happen.
It's not a legally binding referendum. There's a difference between if the government decides.
Well, we had a vote. You can call it whatever you want. I suggested it at a council meeting here a long time ago. And I said, you guys are in a position between, a rock and a hard place. And I don't know what I would do in your position, but I told the council members what I definitely recommend is having a vote of the people of Taos as to whether they want it or not. And the people voted 2-1 against it. By the way, we also had, concerning this airport back 25 years ago, the Taos News at that time, who wasn't for the airport then like they are now, they hired a company from Kansas City to poll the people of Taos. 2-1 against the airport on that polling that they did then. And you talked about working for this for 28 years. People have been working it against it a lot longer than that. Okay? And the results of every one of the polls that was taken, where all the people were allowed to vote, not the people that lived right here in town and had their house to vote here, but all the people that are going to be affected by it in this whole valley. Okay? And every time that's happened, the people voted against it. So that's your information on that. Thank you.
It's the $24 million.
I didn't get an answer here. What do we do to begin our process to get a referendum? What are the steps that we need to take?
You would have to consult an attorney.
Well, I would think that those of us in the town would petition our governing body and talk with the town attorney. and the town attorney will be able to advise us. Those of us that live in the county, I would think you'd take the same process. Tell the commissioners that as a citizen, you would like buy-in, you would like their participation, and I would make an appointment with Bob, a very respectable, hardworking guy, and begin to investigate that process. What Bob Bishop was just talking about was something that was mailed out to registered voters. What you're talking about is a very legal process. So if you want it done, you need to go to the jurisdictional body of your representation. So if you're out on Sugar Lane, then you're in the county. If you're here in the town, you could go county or town. Right now, the county, there's no one from the county representation here tonight. So there's a lot of...
Actually, the planning director is here.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, wonderful. Could you introduce yourself to the people?
Edward Beagle, Acting Planning Director, Taos County.
Mr. Beagle, thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie Martinez. I'm a landowner up in Upper Los Colonias. And first of all, I have a question on your, I would like a copy of your website that you presented, your presentation, and a copy of the contact person for the FAA. And also, I would like to know what are your guidelines at Taos Regional Airport for public records regarding your logbook of planes coming in and out, weight, and type of aircraft that are coming in. Are they open to the public because it's a public facility?
As we said before, this is an uncontrolled airport. We don't keep records. The FAA doesn't keep records of aircraft coming in and out of the Taos Airport.
I do want to say though that any information we do have at the town, you can request, and we will provide to you either electronically or a hard copy.
Whatever information we do have, you're welcome to it.
Thank you. And also, I'm not comfortable with a pilot's determination on their directional pattern. Because, boy, I've seen some planes come in really low in our area, and it's very noisy. And they're big planes. And regarding the Taos Ski Valley, I can assure you that they will do heli skiing once they fix everything up there. There will be some heli skiing.
We might want to just plan a little better.
My name is Marilyn Hoff, and I just wanted, I promise you this will be less than 5 minutes, but I wanted to read a statement that I read. To build a real adobe house that complies with contemporary building codes, you start with a 2-foot deep poured concrete footing reinforced with rebar. After the walls and the frames and the lintels, you pour another concrete reinforced circumference around the top wall of the house before you put on the roof. I know this because I built my own house, and though Dan isn't here, I wanted him to know that I bought a lot of lumber from Bogeans to do this. Just make them like me better. Okay. Such concrete and rebar reinforcements did not go into the construction of that miracle of longevity, Taos Pueblo, whose ancient buildings have been continually inhabited for 1,000 years. These buildings are just dirt on top of dirt, with a little straw mixed in, erected upon dirt, kept standing and viable over the centuries by the continuing care and maintenance of the Pueblo people. Taos Pueblo is and has been a UNESCO-designated World Heritage Site since 1992, a label that deservedly puts it in the same category as the Taj Mahal, the Egyptian pyramids, and the Great Wall of China. This World Heritage Site designation must be at least one important reason tourists from near and far flock to Taos Pueblo and thus to the town of Taos and to Taos County. So given our economic dependence on tourism, all of us Taoseños have our own real financial stake in Taos Pueblo and its World Heritage Site designation. that Taos Pueblo's ancient buildings are very fragile, and so its World Heritage Site designation, and so is its World Heritage Site designation for the Pueblo as a World Heritage Site has been classified by UNESCO as threatened ever since 1993, when UNESCO learned of the germinal plans by the town of Taos back then to build a new runway at Taos Airport. That is, UNESCO believed the Taos Pueblo ancient buildings would be threatened by airport expansion. In 1996, officials in Taos evidently stopped reporting to UNESCO on the progress of these airport plans. The Pueblo people already worry about what effect vibrations from even small planes passing too low over the Pueblo could have on the structural integrity of their priceless ancient buildings. And though the memorandum of agreement made with the Pueblo over airport expansion sets limits on how low planes are recommended, not required, to fly over the Pueblo, these limits as defined are unenforceable. Applied to individual pilots, they are voluntary. So what is threatened by the imminent new runway is not just the survivability of ancient Pueblo buildings, but also the World Heritage Site designation itself. Just as the Pueblo is threatened, so is that coveted designation. That is, down the line after the big jet planes invade our skies to land in the new very long and very strong Taos runway, there is a strong chance that Taos Pueblo could lose its World Heritage Site designation and its free worldwide publicity. How important is that to our mayor and council? Are our elected representatives aware of the choice they could be making by building this new runway? Do they care about having Taos Pueblo designated as a World Heritage Site? Have they decided that it's more important for large jet planes to carry the wealthy to land at Taos Airport than to have the unique distinction of a World Heritage Site located here where we live, which also gives so many people worldwide a reason to visit and spend their money here? It could be the case that the hugely important choice being made in favor of this new runway and the welcoming of big jet planes to our skies will result in the sacrifice of the World Heritage Site designation for Taos Pueblo, because in the long run, it could turn out that we can't have both. That's a very real chance that the legacy of this new long runway could be no more UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Right here. Thank you. She wants to respond.
I'd like to get a response from Julie and Fritz on that, about the Taos World Heritage Site designation.
Well, okay.
Do you want to speak?
Sure. Haven't thought about it. I mean, that's honest. What else would you expect me to say? I haven't thought about it. Like that? Yeah, I haven't thought about it. I will. That's why I'm here. I have about 20 questions here, so I'm hoping before everybody leaves that maybe I could talk with someone.
I'll try to be brief.
Judy, did you want to respond?
Do you want to respond?
I'm just here to listen, and I really appreciate what everybody has to say. I was born here, raised here, and I care about the future. I've seen what's happened in Aspen, in Park City, and places like that. And your words are important to me, and so I wouldn't want to lose that for Taos Pueblo. And I'm just carefully listening to what everybody has to say. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm Thomas French. I've been here for over 30 years. I've participated in the community in a variety of ways, including building a soccer complex out at Ranchos Elementary School, rebuilding Papa Park once, and I don't put myself out there a lot, but I thought I'd throw that out. I have been in contact with Fred Peralta about his reasoning as a town councilman for being so adamantly in support of the airport. In fact, I had a 45-minute conversation with him before I came here, which is why I was a little bit late. Anyway, through my conversations with him, the leading reason, which was given back in 2007 when I contacted Taos Pueblo, since they were not aware of the last public hearing to determine whether the airport was going through at that time. Where am I? Anyway, I contacted Taos Pueblo, and Taos Pueblo, then Gilbert Suazo came out and gave a speech which was aired all over northern New Mexico opposing it. And I am not sure why Taos Pueblo has changed its position, because I got through the town, I got the memorandum of agreement, which I tried to rapidly read before I got here. But I got through about the first 7 pages. And in the first 7 pages, the FAA keeps talking about adverse effects to Taos Pueblo. So I'm bewildered on that. But I'm also bewildered because the issue has always been, the major issue has been the Crosswinds Runway for safety, and the reason for the new runway being a safety issue. So I contacted about a month ago or 3 weeks ago the National Transportation Safety Bureau, and they sent me a link to all the accidents at Taos Regional Airport, which there are 26. And a couple of nights ago, I stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning and read them all. And it is very clear that it's not an issue of safety. That 3 of the accidents mention wind, crosswind. Well, 2 of them mention crosswinds. 1 of them mentions a dust devil. But all 3 of those accidents, the FAA, or whatever it is, National Transportation Safety Bureau, attributed it to pilot error. And there's 1 accident maybe, but I looked at other airports, and the incidence of accidents are much higher in most smaller airports than they are here in Taos. And the accidents that have been cited, I mean, I was friends with Richard Rosen, who is my neighbor, and the lights were not on in that accident in 2001 when he was circling the airport. He made a bad judgment, but it had nothing to do with the airport. The accident in 2013 in which 2 people were killed, because these are the 2 accidents in which people were actually killed. The plane totally missed the runway. It wasn't anywhere near the runway. You can still look at the helicopter videos. So I'm bewildered, for one, that we have been, or that the reasoning by government officials has been safety, when it's actually not an issue of safety. So my question is, what is the issue? That's the first issue that Fred Peralta gave. And then I've asked him, so what's the second issue? Economic development. And so his, I like Fred. He's gotten a huge amount done in the community. When he was mayor, I worked with him some, and I have a great respect for him and what he's done. He was influential in the UNM-Taos campus and everything. But the second reasoning was that CEOs from companies would then be able to fly in and check in on their branches, their investments, branches of their company. And I've thought about that, and it just seems so unlikely. And so I then went and talked with the CEO of the Santa Fe Business Incubator. And she, without knowing anything, was sort of supportive just because she likes economic development. But I asked her what her model was. And they've been very successful in Santa Fe. And their business model is finding people within Santa Fe who are building businesses, not flying in CEOs from elsewhere, and building businesses through residents in their community. And they've been very successful at it. And I still wonder why this runway is being proposed. And I do have a fear of the military.
I just want to take 2 minutes out and show everybody this chart here. Can we dim the lights? Oh, boy. Yeah. Okay, so this is from the FAA. You can read. I don't know if you can read the bottom there, but it's prepared by them. And it's a runway wind coverage, and the first line of figures there says no action. In other words, this is the existing runway, and you can see at the bottom the annual average runway wind coverage when it's acceptable to fly out of our air. You know, this runway here is 94%. Okay, and how does that translate? So 94% on average means 2 days out of every month, it's questionable whether or not you can fly out of the airport. They don't close it down, they don't put any advisories up, it just becomes questionable. So that kind of maybe speaks to your question there. And I know a lot of people have doubted these figures, and I just wanted to put them up there so everyone can see. The worst month is April, and you know, no month does it go below 90%. April is 90%, 90.25. That translates to 3 days a month. Okay, so I just wanted to show that.
Sure.
And Ian came from quite a distance, so I just got that in here.
Hello, we've talked about some of this already. My name is Ian Wilson, and I just want to read a statement I had that will be a little bit repetitive. For decades, there has been, like the title of this is, The Great Taos Airport Crosswind Runway Ruse. For decades, there has been a push in Taos for a crosswind runway at the Taos Airport. The reason being given for the crosswind runway is safety. As a pilot, an engineer, and a lifelong resident of Taos, I agree that there are a few occasions when a crosswind runway would be beneficial. However, a crosswind runway can be shorter than the primary runway because when there is wind, airplanes do not need to travel as far on the ground to take off and land. Airplanes require airspeed, not ground speed to fly. When there is a wind, a shorter ground roll and less ground speed are required for an airplane to take off or to land. The stronger the wind, the shorter the ground roll. The existing runway at the Taos Airport is suitable for 94% of the time. The other 6% of the time is when the wind is blowing hard at an angle to the runway. One solution to the danger of using the Taos Airport in these conditions is to not fly during adverse conditions. Another solution to flying in these dangerous conditions is to build a true crosswind runway for the small airplanes that have the most difficulty operating in crosswinds. Because this runway would be for the occasional use of lightweight airplanes in strong winds, it can be shorter and it can be narrower than the existing runway. Some crosswind runways are not even paved. A runway like this would cost far less to build than the proposed runway. Regarding the design of the proposed crosswind runway, the proposal calls for a very expensive, much longer and wider runway with a taxiway, full-length taxiway. So it is clearly not simply a crosswind runway meant for safety. The design of the proposed new runway actually shortens the length of the existing runway, which is clearly not a good safety feature. Everybody talks about not having intersecting runways. They have chosen to shorten the main runway in order to have a long crosswind runway. It could have been done the other way around, shortening the crosswind runway but leaving the existing runway intact. This design will make for a situation where larger aircraft will prefer the new, longer runway, and smaller aircraft will prefer the old runway, oriented more favorably to the prevailing winds. This situation of one size aircraft using one runway and another size aircraft using the other runway at an airport without a control tower would potentially make Taos Airport more dangerous than it is now. As a taxpayer, I don't want my taxes being spent on a bigger toy for the wealthy. Thank you. real brief comment? Less than a minute.
This lady's speaking.
It has to do with
This statement is kind of philosophical, so I don't know if it goes.
for Fred.
The title is,
The name, it's coming.
Everybody comes in.
and the title is Not in Our Backyard. My name is Bonnie Goss, and I moved to this area in 2005 from Los Angeles. While the underlying long-range military and corporate plans for use of an expanded Taos Airport have not been disclosed to us, I think we can be certain that these plans do not include A, shipping in free food and medicines for the poor, or B, bringing in teams of accountants and Wall Street bankers to help save the homes of those who have been wrongfully foreclosed upon. Therefore, I can only address what I believe to be the most probable usual suspects in terms of motives. The fossil fuel industry is on its way out, but it is fighting tooth and nail to hang onto their domination over our economies that they have enjoyed for hundreds of years. Their desperation, coupled with increasing greed, in the face of the inevitability of the futility of their efforts, make for a very dangerous combination among their corporate structures and military helpers. But Taos County can take the position to say, not in our backyard. In terms of the military, we have recently seen, and without ambiguity, that the U.S. Armed Forces in 2003 gravely miscalculated the efficacy of their war on Iraq. Now it is clear that their destructive efforts, while thorough in ruining the entire country, have fallen far short of bringing democracy or any semblance of peace to the area. Instead, their decisions 11 years ago have at the very least failed to prevent the recent takeover of significant parts of Iraq by a potentially worse dictatorship than had existed before. And even the oil reserves so viciously fought for might eventually be lost to this new militia as well. Note also that even with the work of their companion, the NSA, the military-industrial complex was completely surprised by this post-war turn of events. Therefore, since we know the U.S. military decision-making capabilities are actually poor, why would we now make ourselves accessible to their rehearsals for current and future stumbling and bumbling crusaders? If they are not good at war in the first place, why should we be the guinea pigs for any new efforts they might attempt? Why should we suddenly become a staging ground for more devastation than what they are already perpetrating around the globe? Moreover, it is not the job of the community or terrain of Taos to assuage or solve their feelings of desperation, or to aid in their impossible, wrongful, and frantic attempts to correct their failures by obstinately repeating the same promiscuous and slovenly warcraft behaviors ad infinitum.
Keep reading.
Meanwhile, throughout the history of the United States, New Mexico has been one of the states most neglected by the corporate 1%, and has thus remained among the poorest of the states. But it turns out that New Mexico has thereby been able to retain some of the most chaste and beautiful landscapes in the world by having been excluded from the debilitating effects of so-called economic development by for-profit corporations throughout the past 2 centuries. And we take the position that this area has actually been developing just fine for thousands of years on its own in the first place. Since we in northern New Mexico have the good sense to appreciate the relative lack of corporate insults to our environment so far, we wish to keep it that way. And we know that a key way to do this is to strictly enforce a limited access to our lands, waters, and air. But an expansion of the Taos Airport would most probably leave us in the position of a naked woman in a prison yard. An expansion of the Taos Airport is not needed by the local population here. We can grow our own food. We can make our own clothing. The local 1% who are the primary users of the airport can still be served. The artists who have long ago rejected the lure of glitzy consumer goods and gadgets need only their paints and clays and textiles. And our adobe houses and offices can remain undamaged and safe from vibrations from heavy aircraft and machinery. Lastly, there is an appreciation for community here that so far has not been trampled upon by excessive urbanization and industrialization, and thus has sustained us and could continue to sustain us. We can see the effects in environmental desecration and human decay that have come from the reckless and single-minded thrust of the corporations in their careless and negligent pursuit of ever-increasing profits. We can see the hatred against us that increases because of the military pursuit of ever-widening domination through state terrorism and international vandalism. And as these outcomes become more and more manifest around the country and in the world, by refusing to begin to participate, Taos County can instead become an example to the rest of the world of what interpersonal tolerance and kindness and sanity look like.
Yes.
Yay! Not in our backyard.
Not in our backyard.
How about, can we get like a pro airport person? Because I mean, the majority
These
is
ladies have
obviously.
been waiting a
Okay.
very long time to speak. I'm
Is there
very
a pro
interested in hearing
person?
what-
Go on, go on. And we don't want to intimidate anybody.
No, I'm a little bit on that subject. Who are we talking to? Fritz is here? And
Judy.
Where's the rest of the council?
We're a democracy.
Are they not interested in hearing our point of view at all?
No, they're not.
Well, Andrew and
I'm
Fred
very
voted
upset about
for
that.
the commission.
Just to be fair, Mr. Bellis told us that Mayor Baroni
I heard
is
that.
driving, okay. And Judy
Well,
and
where
I.
are the others?
Or their representatives.
No, the
Our congressman is 2
Well,
hours away at a party.
More clearly.
And let's go to the party and get
Yeah,
it.
it sort of seems to me we're preaching to the
He
choir.
knows about these meetings
No, and I have
and
no
voting
further
lists.
questions I'd like to ask.
Can we speak one at a time so that everybody can be heard?
I think that's all I have to say. I find it very upsetting. I would like to believe that the whole council was here to listen to the reasons we have come up. Look at the research that's been done. Look at all the information. And they aren't here to listen because they've already made up their mind.
That's
And
right.
that makes me really angry.
Anyone back here?
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I'm here as a local that lives here year-round. Maybe I'm the only one in the room that doesn't own one of these aircraft.
You're not alone.
Thank you, because, and none of it's over my head either, and I'm an adult, and I've paid attention all my life. And I know that on a 60-story building that I did all the pipe fitting in with 12 men, I had to go back and forth to the drawing board several times a day. And they were some of the best architects and designers and draftsmen you could find anywhere in the country. Because the best laid plans weren't all that they were cracked out to be, because they overlooked this and they overlooked that. There's a lot of money, a lot of correction. A lot of it was just overlooking capacity of what people could do in a day. So anyway, my point there is that it's a very nice presentation. Thank you for that. But I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with our Air Force either. I know a lot of these faces because we keep going to the same meetings as people who care and keep talking to the big shots. I talked to a man out of Canada with face. He had more damn ribbons on him head to toe. I think he was the big shot down there. And you know, I've had low flyovers, so that's a lie. And the one truth I've heard for sure tonight is there's no guarantees about anything. And capitalism is losing some good sense, some good common sense. Because I'm afraid we see the big $1 million signs in this little town. We may have some people that they're not thinking about us.
No.
They're not thinking about the environment.
No.
They're not thinking about the quality, the beauty of this place.
No.
Excuse me if those are kind of feminine terms. Beauty. You know? Love. God, what a word. Oh my God, what a word. But you know what I've heard here tonight? Military. They're already over my little place. During greeting season, which is tenuous, and I'm not going to go off on that. We have some very learned and dedicated people that work with the BLM and the Forest Service, and they speak volumes about that. Councilman Peralta, I asked him on Nancy's show one morning, he was on, and this was a topic at the airport, and I just called in. I don't know him. But I said, this sounds good. Once again, now I'm an adult saying, not my first time around the block hearing the same stuff. Mr. Peralta, how many businesses have called you? Better yet, how many have you gone around the country to solicit to come to this little town and spend their money here? What guarantee do you have that this is going to help us out here?
How much is he going to get?
He had no answer for that, so there is a good question for those who will step up as our representatives. They're not dictators. They're supposed to represent us, not dictate to us, okay? And they should be here. We, the people, are here. In the people's house, by the way. And he didn't have an answer, so that's a good question. Prove it. Prove it. And all I've heard tonight is this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and there's no guarantee of anything. But we will just have another boondoggle. I'm going to shut up now because I have a tendency to go on. And thank you.
I thought I'd come up here so I don't have my back to you. You know, a couple of people couldn't come tonight. I know a lot of them are against this, but they have a ceremony happening right now at Blue Lake. So maybe they're here in spirit. I also think it's pathetic that Fred Peralta and Andrew Gonzalez could not be here, especially since Andrew sent out a notice talking about the radical anti-airport crazies who are going to be here and how we need to have pro-airport people show up. There are quite a few people who couldn't be here tonight. I have signatures of over 1,000 people who are opposed to this airport expansion. And I was going to give them to Mayor Baroni, but Fritz, maybe you can take possession. This reads, Petition to oppose Taos Airport expansion. We, the undersigned, oppose the expansion of Taos Airport, which will not benefit the majority of citizens of Taos County. Rather, it could be seriously detrimental to our environment, water resources, and quality of life. We ask the Town of Taos to halt airport expansion. We call for an updated supplemental environmental impact statement, a cost-benefits analysis, and a master plan before more money is spent. So we have over 1,000 signatures here. And here's my statement. There are a lot of problems with this airport expansion and a lot of problems with the final environmental impact statement of 2012, which was grossly inadequate. It did not address environmental impacts beyond 13,000 feet of the airport. It did not address fuel dumping. It did not address the broader cumulative socioeconomic impacts. The conclusions made from the case study of Vail, Ruidoso, and Steamboat Springs are the opposite of what the statistics showed. The expressed purpose and need changed from the draft EIS to the final EIS. Almost nothing else in the document changed. The original purpose of economic development changed. The final EIS states the incremental increase in tourism and population resulting from the improvement of SKX is expected to have a minor effect upon growth and development in Taos Valley area. Despite this, the town council is promoting the new runway for economic development and jobs. But probably more significant are the changes that have happened since 2012 that could not have been included in the final environmental impact statement. Establishment of the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument, millionaire Louis Bacon's purchase of the Ski Valley and planned developments, and Cannon Air Force Base's low altitude training area plans. These changes are highly significant and a new supplemental EIS is needed to address these changes before the project proceeds. In regard to the planned Cannon Air Force Base Low Altitude Training Area, LATA, their plans are for, quote, combat mission planning, threat scenario planning, low-level combat training, terrain following, terrain avoidance, simulated threat maneuvers, simulated airdrop procedures, aircraft rejoin procedures, and tilt rotor aerial refueling. This is from a handout at Cannon's Air Force Base Taos Public Forum on Latin, now called LATA. Tilt rotor area refueling means mid-air refueling from the giant C-130 to the notorious CV-22 Osprey. The Air Force openly admits that fuel is spilled with every single refueling operation. Kudos to former town councilors and mayor who signed Resolution 1049, a resolution of the governing body of the Town of Taos adamantly opposing the United States Air Force establishing a low-altitude tactical navigation training area in northern New Mexico. This resolution was approved on September 27, 2010. The proposed new, longer, stronger runway for large planes to be designated ARC-C2 will literally pave the way for this project that has large planes traveling and doing combat training at treetop levels at night. However, the final environmental impact statement, Appendix C4, Forecasts of Aviation Activity, page 134 of 151, 3.1.1.4 military states, quote, itinerant military activity levels have varied between 1983 and 1987. For the purpose of developing projections of future military operations, it was assumed that military activity would continue at a constant level throughout the entire 20-year forecast period. This is the only comment in the final environmental impact statement addressing military operations in our area. Currently listed by FAA, Taos Airport for 2013 are 200 military flights a year. These flights have already increased to at least once a day, and eyewitness accounts report CV-22 Osprey tilt rotor aircraft have been seen down inside the Rio Grande Gorge, in Taos Canyon, over Arroyo Hondo, Wild Rivers, San Cristobal, and elsewhere. Quote, because military operations forecasts have national security implications, the Department of Defense provides only limited information on future aviation activity. Hence, the TAF, Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, projects military activity at its present level except when FAA has specific knowledge of a change. A longer, stronger runway will enable LATA despite the town's resolution opposing it. This is a conflict in governance. How can the public trust a town council that does a 360-degree turn on this resolution that is still on the books? Despite the fact that the FEIS, the Final Environmental Impact Statement, addresses military forecasts in only one paragraph out of 6 volumes, the DOT FAA Record of Decision states this, page 74 of 130, quote, I certify that the project is reasonably necessary for use in air commerce or in the interest of national defense, unquote. Signed by Terry Bruner, FAA, on 9/19/12. This town council refuses to recognize that the proposed LATA plan is real. This is an excerpt from the current Cannon Air Force Base website. The decision to terminate the current EA, environmental assessment, was influenced by the limited scope of the proposal and the existing need to supplement portions of the bed-down EIS at Cannon Air Force Base, said Kingsley. The wing, however, continues to have a requirement to train air crews in low-altitude flying. Currently, this is being accomplished through the use of established military training routes and excess capacity from other bases. All of these methods adhere to FAA regulations and Air Force instructions. However, they provide less than optimal training and will not be sufficient as Cannon continues to receive its full complement of aircraft expected to be complete in 2017. Quote, we still need to conduct flying training missions, said Colonel Buck Elton, 27 SOW commander. The wing operates 9 different types of aircraft, each with unique training requirements. We are now conducting a complete review of all of our training needs, including, but not limited to, low-altitude flying. LATA is still on the table. This is from the environmental assessment that has been withdrawn due to pressure from legislators and the public to write a more comprehensive EIS. I'm almost finished. Quote, the United States Air Force proposes to designate a low-altitude training area in northern New Mexico and southern Colorado where 27 Special Operations Wing, 27 SOW, air crews operating from Cannon Air Force Base would train for worldwide operations under their global response commitment. Cannon Air Force Base based MC-130J and CV-22 aircraft rely on darkness, terrain, and low altitude to provide masking during missions. 27 SOW air crews are required to maintain flight proficiency in varying terrain, including mountainous terrain, varying threat levels, different climatic conditions, and low altitude after dark missions to support special operation forces. With the proposed action, air crews would plan and fly low altitude routes in mountainous terrain, especially at high elevations, to ensure that aircraft power capabilities are not compromised, and that the crew avoids potentially hazardous situations. An estimated 3 missions per flying day, 688 missions per year, would depart Cannon Air Force Base at dusk, enter the low altitude training area, and continue on an approximately 5-hour mission. The proposed low altitude training area would be mapped in its entirety, and air crews would pre-plan and execute night low altitude missions. Air crews would fly approximately 30 route segments in a mission, simulate dropping and retrieving personnel or supplies, participate in low altitude refueling, and perform related 27 SOW training activities. Approximately 10% of the training mission would be flown between 300 and 500 feet above ground level. 40% between 500 and 999 feet AGL, and 50% between 1,000 and 3,000 feet AGL. So here is a link to that report and a copy of the first few pages explaining the mission. And I'm hoping that seeing this in print will help you to realize that this is real and not a scam cooked up by, quote, a few radical anti-airport crazies.
All right, well, since this is the People's Forum, will the people allow Councilman Hahn to speak?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
If he asks permission.
Can I have permission, please? Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions that probably most of you aren't going to like. You're getting to know me pretty good. So, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing you say that if we would have maintained the original runway and created a shorter crosswinds, that would have served just fine. Do I got that about right?
For the crosswind safety issue, yes. Not for refueling of planes that need a longer runway to go elsewhere.
Can I say something for Fred Fair about that?
No.
Okay.
We go back a long way. You knew I was going to say that. Okay, here come my question. First of all, I want to thank John and Rick Bellis and Paul Christie for being here. And I'm about to ask Rick some difficult questions. So that's not new to him, but there are pilots in the room, and I want to thank you, pilots, for coming. It takes a lot of guts to sit here and have mud thrown at you. And not mud, let me be fair. Let me be fair. But I said it, so I'm not going to retract. But that being the case, if you have a better answer, one of you pilots, please say so. How many jobs, how many locals are going to be working on the construction at the airport? Mr. Bellis, do you know, or John?
Until we open up the bids on the 28th and find out who the contractors are, there's no way to answer that right now.
Was there any
Well, you know
requirement for
who
that?
it is. Fred just told me who's probably getting it, right? Didn't he? Okay. Sorry.
And, okay, let me move on. Actually, okay. That's weird. Okay, all right. John and Rick, how many permanent jobs do you think will be created if the expansion goes through?
Well, again, it's...
Without us taking over fixed base operations? Should it remain the same?
It should remain the same unless there is a development plan for the airport.
Okay. Bear with me, I'm just going to push on through, okay? I apologize, Seth, Andres, I apologize. And perhaps our county planner, did he just go? Okay. I'm interested in that collaboration with the county and how we can begin to facilitate that master plan. Rick, you've been a planner. Are there any other planners in there? Patrick Nicholson is here. Let's see him now. Any thoughts on that? How can we make that happen?
Last year, the town, when I was the planning director for the county, the town submitted a airport overlay zone to the county, and I believe in the recently passed land use code, it allows for that. But obviously, that's beyond the planners. That's a policy decision when that takes place and what's done with that. But there are neighborhood associations covering that area, and there were 4 years of meetings with them, all of which have been very involved in developing the zoning in their neighborhoods. And I believe Edward had given a presentation last Tuesday to the county commission on how those neighborhoods will come forward and be adopted, including one that's, the two that are already in existence is Upper Las Colonias and then Stagecoach.
So I hear you saying that neighborhood associations will be an integral part to the development outside of the fence, outside of the airport fence. Okay. Here's some bureaucratic things, Rick, and you and I have talked about most of this, but I want the public to be aware. The process will be that the Armstrong Engineering will make its awardee proposal to the council on September 9th. True?
Depending on the bids that come in.
Projected.
If there's one or more acceptable bids for the project, that is the projected timeframe.
And then on that night, at that meeting, the council will then vote to either accept or reject that recommendation.
That's correct.
And if we accept it, then the project moves forward and it's done.
You would be bound at that point contractually, financially, to complete the construction, first phase of construction, which was broken out up there, which would include the Hall Road and all of that.
Okay.
Paving is the second phase.
Poor Bob. I didn't know he was going to have to work. Okay, now, if we reject, what's the next course of action?
That's up to you. That's a policy decision at that point.
Okay, so if we reject, we can stop and kill the project entirely.
About the FAA.
And then, is there a possibility of moving towards a delay to revisit some of the things that Mr. Ian brought up, the design of the airport, or considerations of an EIS that has been, that is in some people's eyes outdated?
You could delay or modify the project. You know, it's up to the elected officials. Every door is open on that. The one thing I would say about the EIS is you would have to find out how you would fund that, because at the current time there's no budget for that, and that's a pretty expensive process.
If we deny it, will that affect future grant opportunities with other governmental agencies?
I can only give you a personal opinion as somebody that's worked in government for 40 years, and that is, yeah, there's not a chance in hell if you come to your federal officials for money for a water or sewer plant that you're going to get a grant after this.
Can you get
Rick, could you say that again?
Hear it. There's another microphone over here.
I think it's really important for everybody to hear.
Yes, it is.
Okay, let me re-ask the question. So if we deny the airport expansion, will that affect future governmental grant opportunities?
You know, obviously you can't speak for every federal agency, and I don't think any elected official would put himself in that position to give you an answer. But the federal government and your senators and congressmen don't usually commit to that type of money and then have you reverse yourself afterwards. And then I think he would be in a real disadvantaged position to then come back to them and say, we want a new sewer plant or a new water plant or another major project
That's extortion.
growth-based.
That's extortion. We're not going for it.
Well, It may be, but I just want the facts to get out there of what the council is looking at.
That's fear mongering. What you're doing is
Okay.
fear mongering, sir.
Okay.
Let me ask the next question. Business as usual.
Yes.
I hear what you're saying, but I have to ask these questions.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Rick, if we, or John, so I also hear you saying that if the council delays the process, how much time is a reasonable amount of time to delay? And during that time, is it possible to address some of Ian's issues and cost benefit and master planning and tighter collaboration with the county? So could we delay for like 6 months?
I'm going to give you an initial answer and then hand it to John for the actual time frame. But understand that these are grants and they're in calendar cycles. And the original projection was for 3 years of funding for the completion of the airport in the 2 phases, and that's been consolidated to 2 years. And the New Mexico DOT Aviation Division has set aside money for that. The town and the county have set aside money for that. But FAA has to commit money out of its funding cycle. And once you have those commitments, if you miss that deadline, you go back to the bottom of the list and start over again. So if you miss the deadline, there's a chance you may have effectively killed the project.
So when is the deadline? Any guesses?
It would be very complicated to say because each of these funding streams has a different deadline involved in it. And we could certainly make that available to you by putting that together. But we're pretty closely following. The reason we're pushing the bids is we're trying to actually stay ahead of the deadlines that have been posed by the FAA and New Mexico Aviation for their funding cycle for this coming year.
So do we have a 6-month window, or John, what's your best guess?
September 30th.
Okay.
All comments make you rush.
A lot of, some of these questions have been answered. John, the costs of annual maintenance on the airport after the expansion?
Maintenance costs are partially covered by state grants as well as federal grants for the bigger projects like runway pavement rejuvenation and things like that, painting, striping. As far as day-to-day maintenance, the cost of fuel for doing snow removal, things like that, mowing. We've calculated this, but I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Mr. Christie, do you have those numbers available?
Yeah, and Rick could probably back me up. The town pays out of the general fund about $142,000 a year currently to maintain this airport, this runway. And the expanded runway is going to be twice, it's going to be more than twice as big. It's going to have a high-tech lighting, a navigational aid system. So obviously the cost is going to increase. And since there's been no cost-benefit analysis done by the town, we don't know. But I can't see how it could be less than $140,000.
Rick, do you feel $200,000 a year for maintenance on the airport is a reasonable projection? High, low, outright?
I think that's high because most of these costs are fixed costs. The electric bill doesn't go up and the water bill doesn't go up because the runway's longer. And the paying for the snowplow and the guy to do it and the maintenance people on the runway, those are all pretty much fixed regardless of how long the runway is. unless you were so big you needed another snowplow. And as John had said, the majority of the maintenance of the facility, of the runways, is paid for by state aviation on an annual basis. There is a tax associated with that. The two big changes that staff would recommend, one is that the current contract with the fixed-based operator, that's the person that maintains the building and sells the gasoline and fuels the planes and the tie-downs and all that. It's a private contractor, and they obviously make a pretty good profit or they wouldn't be interested in doing it. But that contract's been designed so that it has to be rebid in 4 years. And at that time, it would financially make sense for the town to take that over, and then those profits being made by the fixed-based operator. Our projections are that the airport would not only break even at that point, and the contract was designed that way, but that it would make a profit. And the other thing is that it's like a lot of the services the town provides, the Youth and Family Center, the library, our fire department, they really take care of the majority of the region. And it really, if it's expanded, is, I think people are accurate in saying that yes, the Ski Valley, Red River, Seepapoo, Angel Fire all benefit from that airport. And at some point, just like the landfill, just like 911, those parties have to come to the table, and it has to be treated as a regional airport and funded by the region that's benefiting from those people that use the airport.
How can you force that issue? I mean, how can you make the Ski Valley pay for a free ride right now?
Well, what some civil aviation airports do is that if it's a municipal airport, you have a certain fee to land there, and if you don't belong to the municipality and you're coming here to go to the Ski Valley or your commercial flight, you pay a different fee. So you can build it into your rate structure up front without the permission of anybody. But I think from a long-term perspective, and again, I do agree with you that beyond the safety factor, and I think JR, he left, but did a wonderful feature about 2 years ago that I pointed Paul to. He really did a lot of research that showed it wasn't going to tremendously increase the number of flights, and that wasn't going to have a tremendous amount of economic development and cause more hangars to be sold. That the economic development advantage of the airport really comes from the development around the airport that would result of people being able to take advantage of that longer runway, of having a courier service in and out or servicing airplanes, providing ancillary services to the airport. And those would generate taxes and revenues to support the airport. As I say, the model right now easily can be shown to be a profit-making enterprise. If we canceled the contract with the FBO tomorrow, it would pay for itself.
Thank you. I want to ask a pilot, so pilots, listen up. What's wrong with Ian's suggestion that we leave the original runway alone and we just create a shorter, narrower Crosswinds runway?
Can't hear it.
Okay, so Keno's saying it doesn't work, but here's a gentleman we haven't heard from. Thank you.
I am a pilot. I'm one of the Civil Air Patrol pilots of the plane that you saw out there. And we go out on search and rescue missions when people are lost in the mountains or lost out in the wilderness. If we put 2 people and full fuel in that 172 that you saw on today, this afternoon, as Keno said, we couldn't get off the ground. And so we could not perform the search and rescue that you're talking about. The longer runway is a safety factor. It's a safety factor for all of us who are flying light aircraft out of that place on days like today when you've got 80+ temperatures.
The current runway, the current
runway. And we often try to take 3 people out so that we've got 2 people that can be doing the search and a pilot paying attention to flying. And with 3 people, we couldn't make it off the ground today. So there is a risk. There's a risk to us. There's a risk to people who might need that kind of service out there. I'll say something else. You know, I'm Father Mike. I'm from St. James Episcopal Church. I'm also a retired Army pilot. My first visit to Taos was in an Army helicopter some 30 years ago. And nobody objected me filling up with about $1,000 of fuel on that day. And I haven't seen military transportation increase in Taos since then. There's absolutely no reason that the military would want to come into Taos except the single guy going across country that needs to fill up the fuel.
I just have another question or two. Thank you for your patience. I was talking to a retired Air Force friend of mine who did quality control in Oklahoma, and I'm not adept in these matters. Keno or Bill, Mike, or John, but he was telling me that municipalities and counties can actually restrict and work in ordinances to protect certain areas. And that part of what his job was in the Air Force was verifying that those areas were actually protected. And that the complaints, instead of going to Keno or John at the airport, as we've heard about the Hondo experience, would actually be going directly to the Air Force where they then would investigate. What is the fact around that? Am I mistaken? Am I misunderstanding?
I worked all those issues that Mr. Hahn just mentioned for the state of Alaska, for all the military that was up there. When you have a complaint, bringing it to the city is not effective. Each branch of the service and each base has somebody called the Public Affairs Office. You probably believe that if you call that Public Affairs Office, nothing happens. Having been at the receiving end, you cannot not do something about that problem. It's required. The guy that made the noise, if he'll pull his tapes, everything in a cockpit today is recorded. Everything. He's got his altitude down to about 3% of accuracy, so about 3 feet if he's low. If you really have a problem with what's going on with the runway, you're going about it the wrong way. The gentlemen from the town aren't your focal point. It's your congressman. When you make a complaint to your congressman, it goes right to the wing commander. The wing commander takes it right to the squadron commander. I was one of those, and I take it right to the pilot. You may not believe that. I can't do anything about that, but it's all addressed. The noise issues are addressed. There is no, in the military, there is no, how would you say, if you mess up, you get beaten. That's how it is. You take punishment. If you don't believe it, I can't change your opinion on that, but your best point of complaint is, if it's Cannon Air Force Base, it's the Public Affairs Office. People listen. You may not feel that's the case, but that's the correct format. And if you can't get the response from the base, then you need to go to Udall or whoever's the representative.
It's a waste of time. Why are you here defending it then?
He asked, was that the way it's done? I'm telling you, that's what I have seen. I can't tell you what.
Who is the FAA official that we can approach? Yeah,
There is a, you need to call the FSDO in Albuquerque Flight Standards Division office, and they will connect you, or at least give you the phone number to the representative in Fort Worth. We're under the Fort Worth district. But and you can try that, but your real power is your congressman.
He was here tonight, 2 blocks away, and he knows about this, and he avoids it because he knows what he's going to do.
The only, like I said, what I've seen are congressmen are effective, the FSDO is, the FAA FSDO is effective, and the Public Affairs Office is effective. Your town doesn't have the resources to do that.
So between now and then, Mr. Chavez, if we have an issue, can we call you out at the Taos Airport and get that information again?
I will answer your questions, but you're getting my opinion.
No, the phone number.
And I will find you the contacts at Cannon. I've given them to what? I've had several calls last week, and I will give you what I know. If you don't believe it, I can't change it, but I can give you the phone numbers. I'll look them up for the Public Affairs Office at Cannon. I'll get you the FISDO number in Albuquerque, and I will get you the Fort Worth representative. We were doing work with them last week.
Thank you for your patience.
Councilman, can I make that an offer to, I mean, a number of people referred to the fact that the elected officials may think some of your concerns are on the fringe, or however you put it. Okay, radical. I think that having dealt with elected officials on both sides for a long time, one way to get them to listen is to be able to be as credible and factual in what you represent as possible. And one of the things I know that irritates them is to hear, you know, there are intelligence aircraft over my house. And then, you know, I live next to the airport, so I can almost tell you the next morning when I look on Facebook and everybody says that, I can tell you who it was, because I look out my window and I know who the helicopter is. It's Care Flight, or it's Search and Rescue, or it's Forest Service looking for fire spotting. So what I would suggest is that if, we'll make this offer as the town, if you can get the tail numbers or a description of the plane, helicopter, whatever, and call us at the airport, every aircraft can be identified to the owner and to who's operating and for what purposes by the call sign numbers on the plane. And I do know, as one gentleman said, that because we meet with Kit Carson regularly, that they've been doing, they in Tri-State have been doing a lot of line checking, and then as a lot of you I've seen protesting it too, Tri-State proposed a line to go through the National Monument. They've been doing a lot of surveying work. But if we can help you eliminate some of those, we think what it is, so that when you say what it is, you're accurate, I think that adds to better firm up the dialogue for everybody as to what we're really talking about. And I do want to make the point that, and I think it's been said earlier, and I know everybody goes, oh yeah, but there's nothing the town or the airport can do for controlling flights that don't even land at our airport. And I see every day helicopter flights that go over our county that are between Albuquerque or Santa Fe and going north to Colorado. And we just don't have any jurisdiction over those. But there's nothing with this new airport runway that can be done that already can't be done. The one plane that was up there, the Bombardier, which was, it's a 30-passenger jet, which up here, turboprop rather, has to fly with only half the seats and no cargo to get off the ground, no matter what the runway. And again, I'll be very honest with you, we've had a discussion as the town with someone who has proposed doing a flight with that turboprop airplane. But, I mean, you're talking about once a day in and out of a turboprop plane, which that plane, actually, they want to test run in October without the new runway to do it. It's the same plane. And that's the maximum weight and the maximum size airplane that the new runway or the old runway will handle. So if you want to, instead of saying, you know, like someone made a comment over here, well, Mr. Bacon is going to put in a commuter airline. Okay, well, when you look at the elected officials up here who have spoken to Mr. Bacon, and we asked them for money to pay for the airport, and they said, no, we're not going to get involved in that. So, if you make a statement that the people up here know to be absolutely false because you've never talked to Mr. Bacon and you state it as a fact, and I'm not saying this is a criticism, I'm trying to help your argument, okay, to get them to open their ears, but that hurts your credibility when you make definitive statements, and these folks up here know that to not be correct.
And when are they going to make known what they know? When are they going to tell us that they had that conversation with Mr. It's a two-way street. Are we trusting you and you don't trust us?
No.
You're not becoming, a transparent thing and say, I've never heard anybody at a meeting here say, you know, we talked to Bacon, he says that isn't going to happen, and why do we believe it? We believe it because of this, this, and this. I don't hear any information coming back from you folks up there.
Ask. We're here tonight to have you ask. And what you're telling me,
Who's here tonight?
excuse me, sir, what you're telling me is no matter what we say, you're not going to believe it.
No,
And I don't
I'm saying, where is Fred?
Fair.
Where is Fred? Where is Isaac?
It's not fair to.
Andrew, where are they? I mean, if you're saying you know this and this, it's not just this meeting, it's all the meetings. It's all the meetings that we've had that people have talked up there, and nobody said, oh, well, you have, I heard you say, it's ridiculous to think that there's going to be any military coming in here, because why would they come in here? I saw you say that. So I know that you believe that. But I haven't heard any of these other people talk about the conversations they've had behind the scenes with anybody involved, like Mr. Bacon.
Rick, I wanted to ask.
Ask the question. I'm here tonight. And ask the question and you'll get an honest answer. I'm the first one to actually say to you, yeah, we're talking to someone about a commuter airway.
Good.
I mean, I'll tell you whatever you want to know, that we know, but I can't make up what's
I'm
not
probably
true.
the person who
Who's the
said
one
that.
that's going to get the bid? I mean, Tom Prince?
No, that's not true.
Rick, I'm the person.
You know, let me finish this. I can tell you this, because anybody that thinks that is absolutely wrong, because I will be there with the purchasing agent, and trust me, this will be the most observed, as every bid opening is. It has to be observed by the clerk, there has to be 3 people in the room. Okay, this has been really, you know, nobody knew what the bid would even be till the engineering firm got the specs out the other day.
Will the
so that
town
we could do
council
that.
be there, Mr. Bellis?
No, that's not their role. It would be a conflict of interest. They will have to, as in a quasi-judicial role, as the governing body, approve a contract. So they cannot be part of the process of soliciting the bidders or recommending bidders. The staff and the consultant, independent of each other, will make a recommendation to the governing body.
The reason I said that the Ski Valley wants a commuter service here is because the manager of the Ski Valley came up to me at the tourism meeting, and I had a 10-minute conversation with him, and I asked him, he said, we support the airport. I asked him, is this because you want regular flight, you need regular flights to come in here? And he said yes. That's the reason I said that. And I just wanted to make another point. They can say that they will or not do whatever they want, but when it comes to the point where the airport is actually built, that's when they're going to do what they're thinking of doing. What they say is, you know, he said they want regular flights in here, the head guy at the Ski Valley. That's why I said that.
I have a specific question.
Mr. Bellis, I request that the proceedings here tonight be forwarded to the FAA as required by law.
I would second that request, please. All those in favor?
I think that's one of those accuracy things, that what is required by law that we forward this to the FAA. I'm not aware of any regulation.
That these are community concerns. For example, there is no zoning, and they need to know that for the county in the immediate area of the airport.
Well, actually, I'm going to prepare a report on this for the council, which I will make public before the council reads it in case anybody's got objections or left anything out. I would appreciate, since I don't want to spend a whole lot of time any more than I need to put another report together that nobody's going to read, but so I want it to be accurate. Anything that any of you have, I would appreciate your comments, copies of your written comments, and if you don't have copies tonight, if you can bring them to the executive office, we'll include them in the report. And as I say, we didn't need to do this, but we're streaming this because we want as many people to participate in this process.
Can we get a copy of it online? Will it be posted online?
Yeah, as soon as I get it done, this will be online. Channel 22 will do it.
So we can independently send it to whom we would like to.
Yeah, I mean, any of you want to send independently any of this to them, you can do that, obviously.
I have a specific question. So you made a claim just before that you think that this airport, after we do certain, we take back the contract from Taos Aviation Services, you think that the airport is going to break even, but you haven't done a cost-benefit analysis, correct?
I can't do a full cost benefit analysis until we know what the airport is going to cost, both to build and maintain.
Okay, so you're pretty much just throwing out numbers when you say that.
No, that's not true.
So, I mean, how can you
There is
substantiate the word that you said that you believe the airport is going to break even? How is that?
Because there are engineering tables in which you can go every year, just like there are construction books on every type of building that you're going to build, that tell you what the construction cost, depending on your region, is per linear foot, per depth. Just like the way we build roads. We know what it's going to take to build the road, even though we don't know and maintain it, even though we don't know what the bid cost is, or we wouldn't go into it. And we can tell what the cost of construction should be and what the maintenance cost should be, and we can already know what we're going to generate in fuel sales and repair costs and tie downs and those other things. And in fact, I can tell you that was what held up the airport, was the bids that came back from the engineer came in higher than what our estimates based on industry standards showed they should be. And before the FAA would proceed, we actually had to go get a third party to examine those costs and decide what was reasonable before we could settle on it.
Okay, I'm speaking strictly to maintenance once the airport is perhaps finished, okay, strictly to maintenance. I mean, logic says you're gonna more than double the size of the airport and add all these features to it. So logic tells me that the cost is going to increase to the town to maintain the airport. On top of that, the FAA and the state only pay for capital cost improvements. Okay, that's the only thing they'll pay. And that includes repaving. But the town has to throw in 2.5% of the cost.
That's correct, 2.5%. Yeah, but 2.5% is not much.
No, it's not much, but it's only the capital cost.
Somebody else is paving for the resurfacing, somebody else is paying for the striping, they're paying for the sealing and the coating, and they're going to pay for the snow plow, and they're going to pay for all the other equipment on there. Then yes, we're going to pay 2.5% of that increased maintenance cost. I agree.
Yeah,
so even if you double it,
Ski
that's 2%,
Valley is so popular that
200,000.
they're attracting hordes of aircraft. No, tying the skiing industry to the airport is ridiculous because they're two different animals. It's apples and oranges. If the town Ski Valley, Angel Fire, all the other resorts around here really needed an airport because they were having an overwhelming number of skiers, that would be something different. But that doesn't happen, and that cannot be expected to happen. There are no industrial reasons at all for expanding the airport, period. This pilot over here said there's never been a carrier who has managed to make a profit or even stay in business serving this part of the country.
Yeah,
and now we're going to have military aircraft using that. No, I'm serious. I spent 9 years in city government in the city of Portland. I know that some things get solved out of the view of the general public. And this gentleman over here with his fear-mongering about the future grants, that's not correct. That's not the way to do it. If you want to stop this thing, these council members and the mayors do not have the power. That gentleman said it correctly. He's given you numbers to call and people that you can voice your opinion to. And our senators and our representatives, get on your email, get on your phone, and hound those people and let them know. Do that.
I would suggest
our local peanut politicians don't even have the grasp to understand the real issues.
I would suggest
which is our freedom for our spaces and our homes not to be used for target practice for the military industrial complex.
There's a simultaneous process going on right now, and that's the scoping of the National Monument. And one of the things I would really urge you to get involved with, because very few people turn out to those meetings, that is going to be how much activity actually occurs in very sensitive areas, including some real cultural and historical landmarks and archaeological sites that I don't think we want to be used for recreational purposes like dirt bikes. But one of the things that you can get an absolute no-fly zone over, and it can be annual or it can be seasonal, is migratory patterns. And we have pronghorn antelope, obviously we have the sheep. We have a lot of species out there, and if you get involved in that process, I think a good percentage of the lands that you're really concerned about out there, we could probably, you don't have to do it, the Forest Service will include it, the BLM will include it in the scoping, and a national monument has the highest level of environmental protection other than like Valle Vidal, a wilderness area, which is strictly no traffic whatsoever. But that plan is very important, whether you, I mean, if you're concerned about planes, imagine what it would be like to have four-wheelers out there tearing up the dirt in the middle of a trail. You know?
Right.
So,
what about our homes? Right.
Well, yeah, get involved in that. The comment period's still open with Forest Service. And again, I think a lot of the same concerns you have can be addressed if we can get some no-fly areas over the National Monument.
I'd like to make one more comment, please. I think we all just heard a pretty compelling argument for expanding, having a longer runway. But I'd like to say that when I was buying an airplane, it was highly recommended to me for flying around the Taos area, even though it was just one pilot, to not buy a 172, to buy a 182, which is a more powerful aircraft, more sufficient for this altitude. And so that's what I did. So saying that a 172 wouldn't get off the ground today says something about a 172, that it's not powerful enough for here. So that shouldn't be a good reason to expand our airport.
As the crowd is dwindling, I just wanted to say that your concerns aren't falling on deaf ears, and I'm here and Councilman Hahn is here because we do care about what you have to say. And I was hoping that you could go back one video to show the airport. I'd really like you to show me where Lower Las Colonias and Straight Arrow Road are on the map.
Does anybody have a laser pointer?
Good.
Here, where's the handout? I have a handout. I can just give it to you. I can show you on the little handout.
Well, Rick can do it on the computer. He can do it on the computer.
I think John necessary.
Well, I can get it on a handout, so.
Well, do you have one to give her that has the overlay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one to give you.
I can't tell you specifically where it is, but I have a plat map, and it's Sugar Lane is about right about in the middle of this, right in the green zone. It comes off of Las Colonias, Bertolaga.
Yeah, the audience isn't able to understand this.
Anyway,
Maybe the cursor.
The other thing I wanted to ask also, what is the minimum size crosswind runway that we could build that would be safe and appropriate for everybody? Because I've listened to everybody for and against at all the meetings for the last 5 months that I've been in office. And I've heard a lot of the opposition say, well, it's not the crosswind runway that we're against, it's the size. So I really like to know what the minimum cross runway could
Judy,
be.
can I say something about Fred Fair? Because he's the longest time pilot here, and I really wanted to point something out that he's pointing out. Fred Fair, in 2010, landed a 150, Cessna 150, across the current runway in 75 feet. Okay, the wind was blowing 35 knots, and he landed in 75 feet. That will give an idea of how absurd 8,600 feet is. That is less than 100 feet. He didn't hit the mud before or after the pavement. He landed in 75 feet. He's very skilled. And what I wanted to point out in relationship to that is a gravel runway is very, very effective. If it's packed, if it's graveled, properly built, the town or the county could put together the money to build this. And a gravel runway, a short gravel runway, is totally adequate to deal with the needs of the small aircraft that land out there. That's all that's needed. Nothing like an 8,600-foot runway is needed.
Thank you, Seth. And I also wanted to say thank you to John and to Rick and to Councilman Hahn for putting this together tonight, and all of you for coming.
So Bob's going to get this, and Rick, I just have one more question. And here it is. The night of the 9th, when we're going up or down on Armstrong, will the public have an opportunity for comment? So someone will make a motion to approve, it'll get seconded, we'll have discussion. Will it be at that exact moment that the public can make a final presentation, or people with a burning desire to speak at that time?
You will definitely be able to address the issue in regards to the bid and whether that's appropriate.
To the what?
The bid itself. Normally, discussion is limited to whatever it is that the elected body is voting on. So it is entirely at the discretion of the chairman, which is the mayor in this case, or one of the councilors can request of the chair that it be opened up to broader issues. But typically, and I think you kind of saw that with Councilman Peralta the other day, he believes in that very strict style when he chairs a meeting. All you talk about is what the motion is about that's being voted on. That's it. So it's not a staff decision. It's up to the mayor or the council to petition the chair to open.
Okay, my name is Debbie again, and my concern right now is our public roads, our county roads, our city roads. You know, they really need to be maintenance, and they really need to have a bike route for those who like to ride their 10 speeds or mountain bikes, because you know, people come here because they want to enjoy the beauty. This is New Mexico, the land of enchantment, and they come here because they're enchanted with our environment and our cultures here. So I really think that, you know, the expansion, yeah, we need the expansion to an extent, but I really think they need to focus money on our roads.
Yeah, I do. Ma'am, I absolutely agree with you, and I want to make the point that we are building more miles of road in the town this year than before, and we are enforcing that every road that is built has to have curb gutter, has to have sidewalk, and that everywhere a bike path has been indicated on the bike plan, it has to be built. If there isn't enough money to do it, then we won't do that. And this is the first year we've had a road maintenance budget. And it's small. We started out with $300,000, and we've already pretty much used it up on Bertha in a couple of places. But we will do that.
I appreciate that.
I also want to say that please understand that the money, that if we did not build the airport, that would not put another dollar into roads.
No.
This is dedicated money from the state and federal government that is entirely dedicated and can only be used for federal aviation projects.
Except that it's going to cost the town $1.5 million to match those funds. Right? Isn't that correct? That's what Fred said.
2.5%.
Over the 3 years, correct. But both the town and the county have modeled that in paying that, the sales tax out of the project pays for itself. So at the end of the project, we should have spent none of that on the match.
Gross receipts takes 900, and the town would actually come up with $500,000. So,
and the county comes up with 350. Yeah.
In stating that if we killed this project, we then would have $500,000 for potholes.
And the hospital, you take care of the drug.
Because now it's no longer dedicated.
Well,
I need to hear this answer.
I don't know how to answer that, yes and no, because we're talking about money that we would earn to then pay what we spend versus not building it, then you don't earn the money, so I'm not sure we would have the $500,000.
I thought we had already sequestered the $500,000 number.
We did.
Set it aside to do the project.
We did.
So that $500,000 is in the bank.
Yes.
Okay, so if it's in the bank and we don't spend it on the airport, then can we spend it on potholes? That's where I'm going.
Or the hospital. Is that considered COVID?
Let him answer.
I'm not sure we can.
What are we doing? All right, give it back to Gabe.
I'll take it.
Well, we definitely wouldn't get the $350,000 from the county. That's correct. Yeah,
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't remember the full breakdown on the money, but I do remember that the whole $500,000 couldn't be used that way. That it depends on what the source of the revenue was, but I can find that out for you.
Okay, let's consider.
Thank you.
Thanks. I haven't spoken yet this evening. Thanks for hearing me. I'll just lay my cards on the table. I'm an enthusiastic supporter of the airport expansion. And I've heard a lot of thoughtful comments tonight. First, let me say that I've been coming to these airport meetings for 30 years and have been privy to the, I'm not saying that anyone else hasn't, I'm just saying that I have. And I've seen firsthand negotiations with the Pueblo that were long and involved, and I think considered all the objections that the Pueblo had to the airport expansion. That there's been a conversation going on for 30 years, and some people may not be aware of that, or be aware that there are people in this room that have been present at all of those discussions. And we've seen all of the opportunities for community input. I'm hearing a lot this evening about powerlessness, about decisions being made, about it's a done deal and things being rammed down our throats and things like that. I've heard about silly incursions into Iraq, for example, and disparities in income between 1%ers and 99%ers, and a number of very good points. Osprey flight training out of Cannon Air Force Base and such. And all of those things are very good points. I cannot see what they have to do with the airport expansion. I'm sorry, I may be dumb, but these very, very good points, which mainly center around people's fears and feelings of powerlessness. I see the airport expansion as a screen on which is projected these feelings of powerlessness and insecurity. I think I'm a left brain kind of guy. Heck, I'm a plumber. So I'm looking for facts and evidence. And in the 30 years I've been listening to these discussions, I've been looking for facts and evidence and all people's input and the opportunities for input that people have had over and over for the preliminary environmental impact. Just a second, Tom. Just a second, Tom.
Okay.
That there have been 347 comments on the environmental impact statement, and then comments before public meeting after public meeting after public meeting. And so, and very thoughtful discussion, a great deal of which was pertinent to the issue. But after all of that, after all that debate, after 30 years of debate, it starts to be time to close down the debate. And at times, it starts to...
Ram it down there at the road, right? Is that what? Ram it down.
Well, it's a very slow ramming down if it took 30 years to happen.
Well, Bob was just saying.
So I'll wind it up. I'm sorry, I'm going on, and I apologize. But yes, to conclude, I think 30 years is long enough. Debate in any legislative body comes up against a time limit. Everybody's said all there is to be said, and you cut off debate and you take a vote, and then you go forward, living with the results of the community vote that has occurred.
You haven't said why you support it. You haven't said why you support it.
We're going to wrap this up. And one thing, Councilman, I did get you your answer. Fortunately, Miranda was here. I should have deferred to her. She's our witness. $400,000 to $500,000 was capital money appropriated in the budget, so it wouldn't fix potholes. You could do other capital projects. You could pave new roads, etc. But that is GRT in the current budget, set aside based on our projection of income for the current year, which includes the projection of the GRT that we would take in from the airport. So it's not the full, you wouldn't have the full amount of the money. to spend on an alternative if you didn't do the airport, because that would reduce your revenue expenditure, revenue projection accordingly. I do want to thank everybody for coming here. We will take written comments, we will take emails, we will take everybody's comments. I know we could talk about this all night. We were supposed to go till 8, it's 8:45.
There's still 2 people who want to speak. Could he talk, please? We were promised
All right, one last.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Fees, Arroyo Hondo. I want to make a brief observation about the process. I've been here 11 years. The old political process from the prior county commissions and the prior city councils seems to me can be summarized in 3 words: behind closed doors. What we have been told is what the information they want us to know, and then when the decisions were made, for example, on Old Martinez Hall, again and again, and the councils deciding to back Louis Ray's in building a $3 million white elephant that all of us ratepayers for Kit Carson are paying for, again, behind closed doors. There's bad news and good news. The bumper sticker shift happens is now applying in our county and city government. Thank God. We have a breath of fresh air. This particular decision that we're told by the Taos News is opposed by a small minority of people. Does that mean the publisher? That's the publisher's opinion? I don't know. It isn't obviously the truth. Over 1,000 signatures. And one person here out of, what, 120 or 150 supporting. And maybe others who think so. I came a little late, I'm sorry. But I want to say what to me is really important. It isn't the federal debt dollars, however many millions that can be brought into the county that's important. It's the trust and the cooperation and the solvency that we can maintain here locally. That's what's important. Our solvency has been reduced by the last city administration. Our trust is not being helped by the Taos News. It's not being helped by all the council people and commissioners who are not here today. And the wisdom of the community to be really listened to and deeply involved, not by small groups who are pushing for this interest or that interest, but when a groundswell occurs, the ground needs to be listened to. The wisdom that's here needs to be listened to. And these are the things that are important. And it's the cooperation that we have locally. Federal money in the future, you know, it's a dodo. The dollar and the financial system and the federal government are all insolvent. We don't even know that however many millions of dollars will be spent on this runway will even occur. I'll be quiet, but these are the things that are important. Trust, cooperation, solvency, working together. Thank you.
If I can give you one ray of hope, it's that if your cause has been put down by the publisher of the Taos News, they have not picked a winner in probably the last 5 years. As the mayor and council, it sits up there with proof. And on that note, I would really, please, if you have any written statements, if you have any data, if you have any maps, please get them to us, okay? We want to be inclusive of everything everybody wants to submit.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick.